So, welcome to another frequently asked questions session. This time, we're going to be talking about the dreaded wraparound obligations.
Okay, wraparound obligations. There is a question that comes up with regular frequency, which is to do with breakfast clubs and after school clubs and children who have EHCPs, and parents who want to put their child into those breakfast clubs and after school clubs, and you don't have that TA because they're employed from 9 o'clock till 3:30 and they're not employed either side. And the question comes up with, am I obliged to take this child because they need a one-to-one there or they need additional staff?
I'm going to say no.
It depends. I think this is my answer to everything. It depends. Okay. So first of all, it will depend who is responsible for that club. So if you are employing an external business to run that wraparound club for you, effectively they are hiring the premises and they are the ones taking the payment for it, or even if they're running it for free, to be honest. If it's an external organisation, i.e. not provided by the school, not part of the school offer, then no, you are not obliged to put anything in place. At that point, you're going to be going back to the parent and saying, actually, you need to apply for a personal budget for that if that's what you want, but it needs to have an educational value for that personal budget to exist. Or they need to use their DLA payments, because that's what they are designed for, to disabled living access. It's their access to that, which is above and beyond. It's an additional cost beyond what a child without EHCP needs. Okay. On the other hand, if it is part of your school offer, in other words, as a school you are running it and you are making money from it, unfortunately, the answer is yes, you must make provision. So if I give you an example, if we look at a school trip, so I've got a class of year 4 or class of year 8, it doesn't really matter, and I want to run a geography trip. Now we know we can't charge for that geography trip if it is a part of the curriculum. So if I am saying children must attend this trip in order to understand what we're delivering as part of the curriculum, then as a school, I can ask for a voluntary contribution, but I can't demand a payment for it. Okay. On the other hand, if it's a geography trip that's being run on a Saturday morning to go to the seaside to enhance that curriculum, but is not a compulsory part of it, then I can require that it is paid for, because it's an above and beyond the school offer. Okay. So although that has nothing to do with SEN, it kind of helps to illustrate the difference here. If I am offering the breakfast club and the after school club as part of my school offer, and that child is part of my school, then I am obliged to make that provision available to those children.
Ooh.
If a separate business is providing it, yeah, okay, it's kind of part of my school offer, but technically it isn't, because that business could separate itself and go to the school down the road, then I'm not obliged to do anything. And that business is not obliged to do anything. Simply, yes, okay, they've got to meet the Equalities Act, and some people will argue, well, actually they need to do it, but it's not reasonable. It isn't reasonable for a very small breakfast club being run by the local Rotary or the WI or something to employ an additional member of staff, because they're probably not making much money from it anyway. So it's not a reasonable adjustment within that. That's why they don't have to do it. But if you are offering it as part of the school, then yes, you must. Let's just include our SEN children in that geography trip. Again, if it is part of my school curriculum offer, I have to make adjustments to that trip to accommodate children with special educational needs. It might be that I need to take an extra member of staff. It might be that I need to, if it's an overnight trip, maybe they need to come home overnight. Maybe they parent might be willing to stay in a hotel nearby or something. They may need different transport arrangements, but I have to accommodate that child. I can't exclude them from it because they've got a special educational need. I very often read the ones about this child's got ADHD and autism and their behaviour is horrendous and I don't want to take them on this trip. Well,
how do I get out of it?
Yeah, basically. Well, the answer is tough.
Yeah,
if it's part of your curriculum and you are saying that every child needs to access this, then you have got to make it accessible for that child. That might mean adapting the whole of what you do and bringing the experience to the school, or it might mean looking at what's reasonable within that for that child, but you can't blanket exclude them. They may exclude themselves. They may choose not to go, in which case you've still got to have that plan in place for how are they still going to access their curriculum then if you've just said that's part of the curriculum offer, they've got to attend it, okay? On the flip side of that though, back to the Saturday morning geography trip, going to the beach to collect seashells, that's an additional to offer by the school. We haven't got to make provision, but we do have to be reasonable. I'm thinking back to a secondary school I worked in where they started a skiing trip, but they went to Disneyland Paris. And one of our highest need students wanted to go on that trip. And my head teacher turned around and told me, "You're going because you need to look after him." And I just looked at my head teacher and went, "Well, I don't have a passport, so actually, no, I'm not." Because that was quite, I didn't have a passport. It was quite a simple answer. But it wasn't part of curriculum and it wasn't reasonable. And it was an additional cost to the school to be able to send an additional member of staff and all the rest of it. So we try to accommodate, we try to make as much accessible as possible, but there is no obligation on the school to make a skiing trip accessible to a student in a wheelchair.
And there's also probably no expectation on the TA to actually go in their own time to go and do this then, I suppose.
For an additional activity.
An additional
For an additional activity, no. If it's part of the school curriculum and activity, then yes, there is. Even if it kind of extends towards the end of the school day, or it's, year 6 residential is usually the example used, there kind of is an expectation that people will be involved in that, but there is also an expectation that the school will pay back some of that. So either time off or additional pay or whatever else. We know it doesn't happen. We know it comes from goodwill instead, but there is that kind of payback you could look for.
Okay, I suppose that ends this frequently asked question. If you would like to leave any comments at the bottom, you can do, and we will try to answer them as we go.